Figured I'd make you feel at home. You guys are good at this, huh?
Hello, we are BTS. Today we're here to speak with President Biden about anti-Asian hate crimes, Asian inclusion, and diversity.
Hi guys, let me come out and say hello. Nice to meet you,
Nice to
Kareem.
meet you.
Nice to meet you. So we're gonna go just out of this door.
And hi, we're BTS, and it is a great honor to be invited to the White House today to discuss the important issues of anti-Asian hate crimes, Asian inclusion, and diversity.
최근 아시아계를 대상으로 한 많은 증오 범죄에 굉장히 놀랍고 또 마음이 안 좋았는데요. 이런 일이 근절되는데 조금이라도 도움이 되고자 오늘 이 자리를 빌어 목소리를 내고자 합니다.
한국인으로서 또 에이시안으로서 꼭 이야기를 해야 되는 문제라고 생각이 들었고요. 특히나 이제 한국 아티스트로서 이제 해외를 다니면서 이제 언어나 문화를 초월하는 그런 초월을 해서 또 많은 사람들한테 닿는 그런 경험을 했던 사람으로서 이 다양성이 주는 특별함을 꼭 이야기해야 된다고 생각이 들었습니다. 그리고 또 이제 차이가 주는 특별함의 여러 많은 사례들이 훨씬 더 늘어나야겠다는 생각도 들었고요.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. How are you?
Very good.
When we see hate and prejudice, it's meant to make people afraid. And it's meant to make people feel alone and therefore without power. When you all speak about it, you speak to people in a way that reminds them they're not alone.
We just want to give back all the love that we got, use our voice like you told us. That's all we wanted. So today is a really, really historical and big day for us.
We feel happy to help make a positive impact, and we feel the great responsibility at the same time.
It's an honor to meet you, Mr. President. And welcome to the White House. Come on up here, guys. I got involved in public life because of civil rights. Even back then, famous artists help move people. What you're doing makes a big difference. Talking about how we have to eliminate hate is important.
When we first heard that the White House and President Biden invited us because of the Stop Asian Hate and the anti-Asian hate crimes, we were like, this is it, why not? We have to go to DC, we have to see you, and thank you for recognizing all the efforts, and we've truly felt that our time truly pays off and pays back.
This is an important month here in America. A lot of our Asian American friends have been subject to real discrimination.
We want to say thank you sincerely for your decision, such as signing the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act into law. We truly appreciate the White House and the government's trying to find solutions.
I know you know what you're doing, but don't underestimate it. It's not just your great talent, it's the message you communicate. It matters. This is one president who appreciates you.
Wow. Woo-hoo. I have to tell my mom.
Lastly, we thank President Biden and the White House for giving this important opportunity to speak about the important causes, remind ourselves of what we can do as artists. Once again, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chaplain Colonel James Foster, Command Chaplain, Joint Task Force, National Capital Region, and the United States Army Military District of Washington.
I invite you to a moment of prayer with me on this hot but amazing day. Almighty God, who rules the nations and gives freely to those who ask, I praise you this morning and thank you for a nation here who continues to call upon your name. I thank you for the blessings you have bestowed upon us and the freedoms we enjoy because of your righteous right arm. For generation after generation now, the men and women of this nation have stood up when called upon in order to do our very best at providing liberty, justice for all, and a peace that passes all understanding. The headstones surrounding this amphitheater and a multitude of others around us, and for which we give particular thanks today. Lord, they call out to us to choose wisely in our endeavors. So on this day of remembrance, stir our hearts to stand united and to continue striving for that peace that only you provide. Now bless our efforts and our words in this place today. In your holy name I ask it. Amen.
Please remain standing for our national anthem, presented by the United States Air Force Band and singing sergeants. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, General Mark A. Milley.
Mr. President, Madam Vice President, Secretary Austin, distinguished guests, fellow Americans, and most importantly, Gold Star families, welcome to all. And it's an honor to join you all in solemn remembrance and reflection on this 154th observance of Memorial Day for the over 1 million Americans who have given the last full measure of devotion in service to our country. Beginning with the founding of our nation, more than 42 million Americans have worn the cloth of our country. From Lexington and Concord to Yorktown, from Manassas to Appomattox, in Bellawood and Normandy and Iwo Jima, Pusan, Incheon, the Ia Drang, Ramadi, Mosul, and the Arghandab. These places are forever etched in our national vocabulary and in our collective memory. The story of the sacrifices made is the story of our nation. It's the story of our values. And behind every fallen soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine is a family whose sacrifice beats in the heart of every American. On this day, reflect on the parents who grow up without the comfort of their child, of the children who grow up without a parent. For the families of our fallen, every day is Memorial Day. Our fallen fought and gave their lives for an idea, a simple yet powerful idea. The idea that is America, embedded in our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, for which we swear an oath. The idea that here in the United States of America, every single one of us is born free and equal. No matter who you are, no matter where you came from, under these colors of red, white, and blue, all of us, every single one of us, is an American. And our fallen lived knowing that freedom and the idea that is America is worth fighting for. And it's up to us, the living, to ensure they did not die in vain. And we do that by recommitting ourselves to the idea, the values that constitute America. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and all women are endowed by the Creator with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we uphold the cause, not just for which they died, but the cause for which they lived. And we must continue. We must live a life that is worthy of their sacrifice. And we continue to build this nation and never forget the idea that is America. So on this day, every day, may God bless our fallen and the cause for which they gave their all. It is now my privilege to introduce the Secretary of Defense, a man who I have personally witnessed his leadership in the crucible of battle. And I have had the pleasure of knowing him for a quarter of a century. He's a leader of courage, a leader of integrity, a leader of grit. It's my pleasure to serve alongside him yet again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce the 28th United States Secretary of Defense, Lloyd J. Austin III.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Vice President Harris, Mr. Imhoff, fellow members of the Cabinet, General Milley, and members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, good afternoon. To our distinguished guests, our service members, and my fellow veterans, thank you for letting us share this day with you. And to the Gold Star and surviving families here, you honor us with your presence. I know that when you look across this hallowed ground, you ache for those you have lost. Your devotion to your loved ones has never faltered. And in turn, America owes all of you support that does not waver. We renew that dedication every Memorial Day. And as we do, we also renew our faith in our democracy and the values of self-government that bind us together as Americans. We understand the stakes. In the 21st century, the security of the world hinges again on the survival and success of the American experiment. And in turn, that great experiment relies on the American patriots who volunteer to keep their fellow citizens safe and their nation secure. And these patriots carry the moral force that can be wielded only by free people defending their inalienable rights and the rule of law. Today, on the battlefields of Ukraine, The world again sees the power of democratic citizens and soldiers to defy tyranny, cruelty, and oppression. Their freedom is under attack. And so is the international order rooted in the rules that we have built since World War II at such terrible costs. We understand the challenge, and we're determined to meet it. As the President says, in the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment. We draw inspiration from the unity of our allies and partners, and we draw strength from the men and women of the United States military. In the years since we last gathered on this solemn day, America's longest war has come to a close. And today we remember the 2,461 American service members and personnel who fell in Afghanistan. And we remember all those who still carry the wounds of that war, to body and to soul. We hold them in our hearts alongside the patriots across generations who gave their lives to defend us all. The heroes here are joined together, united not just by their final resting place, but by their devotion to the values that gave life to our democracy. And they came from every state, from every territory, from every background, and from every creed. But they were all patriots who loved their country, who marched to defend our democracy, and who fought to forge a more perfect union. Their sacrifice demands more than even our deepest gratitude. In the words of President Kennedy, who rests nearby, quote, "We must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." So as we honor our fallen today, let us live by their dedication to democracy, to liberty, and to the Constitution. When choosing between what is easy and what is right, let us live by the example of our fallen warriors. And when the values that we hold dear are put to the test, let us live by the ideals that they gave their lives to defend. Today we hold the fallen in our prayers, and every day we strive to make them proud. Thank you again for being here today. And ladies and gentlemen, our Commander-in-Chief has been a staunch and steadfast champion of our men and women in uniform. And I know personally how much he values their sacrifice, their commitment, and how devoted he is to our men and women in uniform and to the families who serve alongside them. He has spent a lifetime in public service to advance the democratic ideals for which so many have given so much. It is my honor to introduce the President of the United States.
Thank you. They lie here in glory and honor, in quiet rows in Arlington, in cemeteries in Europe that I've visited, many of you have, in graves across our country, in towns large and small, America's beloved daughters and sons who dared all, risked all, and gave all to preserve and defend an idea unlike any other in human history. The idea of the United States of America. And today, as a nation, we undertake a sacred ritual to reflect and remember, because if we forget the lives that each of those silent markers represent, mothers, fathers, siblings, spouses, children,
if we forget what they sacrificed, what they made, so that our nation might endure, strong, free, and united, then we forget who we are. Who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, our First Lady, the love of my life, Jill, Vice President Harris, the second gentleman, Secretary Austin, General Milley, Joint Chiefs of Staff, Cabinet members, Gold Star families, most importantly, and survivors. Today, we renew our sacred vow. It's a simple vow, to remember, to remember. Memorial Day is always a day where pain and pride are mixed together. We all know it sitting here. Jill and I know it. Today's the day our son died. And folks, for those who have lost a loved one in the service of our country, if your loved one is missing or unaccounted for, I know the ceremonies reopen that black hole in the center of your chest that just pulls you in, suffocates you. I said 7 years ago today, our son, Major Bo Biden, took his last breath at Walter Reed. Major in the Delaware Army National Guard, he insisted on deploying to Iraq with his unit for a year when he was Attorney General. Came home a decorated soldier, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit, Delaware's Conspicuous Service Cross. He didn't die in the line of duty. He came home from Iraq with cancer. It was horrific cancer. It's still with us no matter how long ago we lost, whose loss is still raw. I promise you the day will come when the memory of your loved one, your patriot, will bring a smile to your lip before it brings a tear to your eye. That's when you know you're going to make it. Today, American service members stand watch around the world. And as many of you know, at often at great personal risk. And this Memorial Day, we know the memory is still painful of all the fallen who lost their lives during the last 2 decades in combat. Each of them leaving behind a family, a community, hearts broken by their absence, and lives that will never be the same. We see in the hundreds of graves here in Section 60 at Arlington, reminder that there's nothing low risk or low cost about war for the women and men who fight it. 7,054 American military members gave their lives over 20 years of our Iraq and Afghan conflicts. Untold others died of injuries and illness connected to their service in these wars. And the enduring grief borne by the survivors is the cost of war that will carry as a nation forever. And so, to every Gold Star family, to every survivor and family member and caregiver, this grateful nation owes you as well as the mercy you lost. And we can never repay the sacrifice. But we will never stop trying. We'll never fail in our duty to remember. With their lives, they bought our freedom. And so with our lives, we must always live up to their example, putting service before self, caring for our neighbors as ourselves, working fervently to bring our union just that much closer to fulfilling the founding creed. As the Secretary said, that all women and men are created equal. I've often said that as a nation we have many obligations, but the only one that is truly sacred, the only truly sacred obligation we have is to prepare and equip those women and men we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they return home and when they don't. This is an obligation that unites Americans. It brings us together to make sure the women and men who are willing to lay down their lives for us get the very best from us in return. I want to acknowledge that we're making progress in key areas like comprehensive bipartisan legislation that is advancing in Congress that will deliver health care services and benefits to veterans and their survivors impacted by toxic exposures. We don't know how many Americans and service members may have died because of what they were exposed to on the battlefield. Toxic smoke from burn pits near where they were based. Burn pits that incinerated with the wastes of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. We have a duty to do right by them. And I'm determined to make sure that our brave service families and members that served alongside them do not wait decades for the care and benefits that they deserve. And that's why we're working so hard to find out what the facts are. Where we can still save lives, we have to act. All of us also have a duty to renew our commitment to the foundational values of our nation in their honor. For those are the values that have inspired generation after generation to service. On Friday, I spoke at the graduation and commissioning ceremony of the U.S. Naval Academy. I had an opportunity to do it the night before as well. It was a remarkable experience again, an honor, looking out at those young men and women, newly commissioned officers. They hold before them the example of the heroes who have gone before them, many of your family members. Heroes who have answered duty's call at Lexington, Concord, Antietam, and Gettysburg. Belleau Woods, the Battle of the Bulge, the Korean and Vietnam and Afghanistan, Iraq, and so many other places around the world. So many of whom never returned home, including the legacy of all those held prisoners of war or who are still missing in action. To be here today, soon after that joyful celebration at the Academy, is a bracing reminder of all that we ask of our service members and their families. For it's on the strong shoulders and noble spirits of our service members that our freedom is built, our democracy is sustained. And in this moment, when a war of aggression is once more being waged by Russia to snuff out the freedom, the democracy, the very culture and identity of neighboring Ukraine, we see so clearly all that's at stake. Freedom has never been free. Democracy has always required champions. Today, in the perennial struggle for democracy and freedom, Ukraine and its people are in the front lines fighting to save their nation. But their fight is part of a larger fight that unites all people. There's a fight that so many of the patriots whose eternal rest is here in these hallowed grounds were part of. A battle between democracy and autocracy, between liberty and repression. The ambition of a few will forever seek to dominate the lives and liberties of many. A battle for essential democratic principles, the rule of law, free and fair elections, freedom to speak and write and to assemble, freedom to worship as one chooses, freedom of the press, principles that are essential for a free society. We've heard this a lot. We've heard this a lot over the years, but we're now realizing how real it is around the world in so many countries as I speak. These are the foundations of our great experiment, but they are never guaranteed, even here in America. Every generation has to defeat democracy's mortal foes. And into every generation, heroes are born, willing to shed their blood for that which they and we hold dear. Ladies and gentlemen, today we remember and we reaffirm freedom is worth the sacrifice. Democracy is not perfect. It's never been good, perfect. but it's worth fighting for. If necessary, worth dying for. It's more than just our form of government. It is part of the very soul of America, the soul of America. Our democracy is our greatest gift as a nation. Constant work of perfecting the union, and we have not perfected it, but we've never stopped trying, of opening the doors wider of opportunity and prosperity and justice for people everywhere. Our democracy is how we endure through every challenge, overcome every obstacle we faced through the last 246 years of self-government, and how we've come back stronger, a citadel of liberty and justice for everybody. This is the mission of our time. Our memorial to them must not be just a day when we pause and pray. It must be a daily commitment to act, to come together, to be worthy of the price that was paid. May God bring comfort to all those who mourn. May God bless our Gold Star families and survivors. And please, God, protect our troops. God bless America and all of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the playing of taps and the benediction.
Please join me in this closing prayer. Lord, thank you for this nation we call home. Thank you once again for those who, as the song says, more than self their country loved, and for the families of those fallen that are still grieving today. These are the patriots who continue to pay the price for the peace and security we enjoy. Now, God, bless us with your Spirit as we strive to honor their full measure of devotion, and bless with strength and courage those who faithfully continue to serve. Now, God bless America, her leaders, and all her children. Amen.
Please remain standing for the singing of America the Beautiful, performed by the United States Air Force Band and the Singing Sergeants.
Morning, everyone. With today's excellent jobs report and unemployment remaining at near historic lows of 3.6%, I want to speak very briefly today about our economy and what we're doing to lower the cost for American families. I know that even with today's good news, a lot of Americans remain anxious, and I understand the feeling. I grew up in a family about 100 miles from here that where the price of gas went up, you felt it. It was a discussion at the kitchen table. And there's no denying that high prices, particularly around gasoline and food, are a real problem for people. But there's every reason for the American people to feel confident that we'll meet these challenges. Because of the enormous progress we've made on the economy, the Americans can tackle inflation from a position of strength. It's still a problem. We can tackle it from a position of strength. The purpose that we've set out to accomplish and the progress we've made, I think, is critical. At the time I took office, about 16 months ago, the economy had stalled and COVID was out of control. Today, thanks to the economic plan and the vaccination plan that my administration put in action, America has achieved the most robust recovery in modern history, just 2 years removed from the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The job market is the strongest it's been since just after World War II. We've got more evidence of that today. We learned that in May the economy added 390,000 new jobs, bringing the total since I took office to 8.7 million new jobs, an all-time record. We learned that more Americans entered the labor force in May. In fact, working-age people have come back into the workforce at a faster rate in this recovery than at any point in the last 40 years. That means that the unemployment rate is near historic lows, and the number of Americans on unemployment benefits has gone from record highs to record lows, with millions of Americans moving up to better jobs with better pay. And American manufacturing is booming. 600,000 new manufacturing jobs created since I took office. But it isn't only about jobs. Since I took office, families are carrying less debt. Their average savings are up. A recent survey from the Federal Reserve found that more Americans feel financially comfortable than any time since the survey began in 2013. That confidence and comfortability is part of the reason why Americans applied to start more new small businesses last year than ever before in American history. And because of our historically strong growth, we have strengthened Medicare and Social Security programs that millions of American families rely on. Yesterday, I learned that Social Security and Medicare trust funds will be able to pay benefits for longer than previously projected before we pass the American Rescue Plan. The reason? A faster than expected recovery in jobs, earnings, economic growth. It's all strengthened the financial prospects for these bedrock programs. In fact, America is in a stronger economic position today than just about any other country in the world. Independent experts have projected that the U.S. economy could grow faster than China's economy this year. That hasn't happened since 1976, nearly one half century ago. The point is this: we've laid an economic foundation that's historically strong, and now we're moving forward to a new moment where we can build on that foundation, build a future of stable, steady growth, so we can bring down inflation without sacrificing all the historic gains we've made. And that's what we're beginning to see in today's jobs report. With today's numbers, the jobs over the last 3 months have averaged about 400,000 jobs per month. That's historically robust and a sign we're beginning to shift to steady growth after rapidly recovering 600,000 jobs per month over the prior 6 months. And as we move to a new period of stable, steady growth, we should expect to see more moderation. We aren't likely to see the kind of blockbuster job reports month after month like we had over this past year. But that's a good thing. That's a sign of a healthy economy with steady growth, rising wages for working families, everyday costs easing up, and shrinking the deficit. That stability puts us in a strong position to tackle what is clearly a problem, inflation. I've been very clear that fighting inflation is my top economic priority. On Tuesday, I spoke about one element of my inflation plan, giving the Federal Reserve the space they need to operate. Today, I'd like to address the two additional elements of my plan to tackle inflation. One, bringing down the cost of everyday goods for families. and two, bringing down the federal deficit at the same time. Bringing down the cost, here's where we stand. The two challenges on the minds of most working families are prices at the pump and prices at the grocery store. Both of these challenges have been directly exacerbated by Putin's war in Ukraine. The price of gas is up $1.40 since the beginning of the year, when Putin began amassing troops at the Ukrainian border. This is a Putin price hike. Putin's war has raised the price of food because Ukraine and Russia are two of the world's major breadbaskets for wheat and corn, the basic product for so many foods around the world. Ukraine has 20 million tons of grain in storage right now, and it's been in storage since the last harvest. Normally, that would have already been exported into the world market. But because of Putin's invasion and blockade of the port on which they could take that grain out for the rest of the world, it's not. It's not. And look, I understand that families who are struggling probably don't care why the prices are up. They just want them to go down. Joe, what are you going to do to bring them down? But it's important that we understand the root of the problem so we can take steps to solve it. I've been up front with the American people from the outset that there would be a cost here at home of Putin's decision to brutally and savagely invade a sovereign nation. But as your president, I remain committed to doing everything in my power to blunt the impact on American families. That's exactly what I'm doing. I led the world to coordinate the largest release of global oil reserves in history, 240 million barrels, to boost global supply and keep prices from rising even more. I directed the sale of gasoline using homegrown biofuels this summer, and I'm working closely with our European partners to get more of the grain locked in Ukraine right now out into the world market, which could help bring down prices. There's ways to do that over land, which we could talk about at another time. But actions have already helped to blunt that what would have been an even larger Putin price hike. As I said, I'm going to continue to use every tool available to me to further blunt those price hikes as we move forward. But the fact is this, there's more than one way to solve this problem. If food and gas prices are going to be elevated by Putin's price hike, one way we can make things a little better for families is by helping them save on other basic items their family needs on a monthly basis, like their utility bills, their internet bills, their prescription drug bills, and other costs like housing. My goal is to make sure that at the end of the month, families have a little more breathing room than they have now. For example, here's something we can do right now. Congress could help ease the cost for families right away by passing my clean energy investment proposal that I proposed. It's been sitting there. Things like tax credits for businesses to produce clean energy, the tax cuts for families to make their homes more energy efficient. That's what it results in. I met with nearly a dozen CEOs of America's largest utility companies, such as Southern Company and American Electric Power. They told me that if we pass the investments, they'll immediately lower the average family's energy cost by about $500 a year. That would help a lot. That'd make up for a lot. In the long run, it would help families make America truly energy independent. So in the future, American families are no longer subject to the whims of a dictator, half a world away controlling oil. It's not just utility bills, though. I laid out a plan to lower prescription drug costs by giving Medicare the power to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies and how much they can charge, just like they do with the Veterans Administration. Right now, they say we're not going to pay more than X amount of dollars for your insulin. Well, they can decide not to sell it at all, or they can sell it at the price that the government says they'll pay for it. Bringing down the average cost of prescription drugs by capping that cost of insulin, by the way, at no more than $35 a month. It costs them less than $10 to make it. And in some families, it means hundreds of dollars a month, and sometimes hundreds of dollars a year, depending on what ailment they're trying to deal with. Someone with diabetes, for example, it's hundreds of dollars per year. Someone with arthritis, it could be thousands of dollars per year. I've laid out a plan to lower rent and mortgage costs, the largest cost most families face, around a third of a typical family's budget, because we have a shortage of housing. building more than 1 million more housing units and closing the shortfall in affordable housing in this country will do that. I've laid out a plan to lower the cost of high-speed internet by working with the 20 leading internet service providers to cut their prices and raise their speeds for tens of millions of households. This could lower what they have to pay for high-speed internet by $50 a month or more. And nearly 40% of households in America qualify for these savings. And by the way, you can find out if you'll be eligible by visiting getinternet.gov, getinternet.gov. Say it again, getinternet.gov. See if you qualify. I've laid out a plan to lower the cost of everyday goods that move through our supply chains to stores and families' doorsteps. For example, at the State of the Union, I called on Congress to crack down on foreign-owned shipping companies that have raised their prices to transport goods by as much as